We're joined in the room by Emma Sheeran and Johnny Buckley, and online Sinead McLaughlin, David Honeyford and Diana Armstrong. There's nobody in the public gallery, but just remind members to put their phones onto silent. Apologies from the Chair, Philip Brett. Declarations of interest. If any members, any declarations of interest? If you do, indicate. If not, we'll indicate as we go along in the meeting. Chair's business. Members, you'll know the energy strategy that the Audit Office launched a report into the energy strategy. It's understood that the Controller and Auditor General will brief the PAC, which has primacy, on this issue on Thursday, the 23rd of October, which is tomorrow. Pending their decision on what they do next in terms of where they go, it may be appropriate, obviously, that we delve in. It will be appropriate that we delve in further, but is the committee content that we write to the department to seek an update on the terms of reference and timeline for its review into the energy strategy? Members content?
Content. And Chair, just on that point, so if the PSC notify then that they're taking up something beyond this,
yes,
based on what they say, whether or not we could get is it possible for us to be briefed by the Audit General?
I think Mr. Honeyford wants to come in this.
Do you want to clarify that point first, Peter?
Okay, so we will find out. Hopefully, the PAC will make a decision tomorrow about what they want to do with this report. So if they decide they don't want it, then it's over to us, and you can absolutely ask the CNAG to come along. I suspect she'll be delighted. But if, on the other hand, PAC are going to take it forward, then they'll take it forward. But we'll find that out on Thursday, hopefully.
Sorry, David?
Firstly, just to declare slight interest that I'm a member of the PAC as well. But is this something, right, I understand the Auditor General coming to us, but is it worth getting the department in regardless, or do we have to wait for PAC period guide us out? But is it worth the department coming in to go here, talk us through where we are, where we're going, and kind of the delivery on that?
What I would suggest, members, is that you write to the department and ask them about, they were going to do a review of the energy strategy in 2025, so we can ask them about that, and there's our hook. So they will then come back and say, oh, we've done it, or no, we're about to do it, or whatever, and then you can decide what to do, and by that stage we'll know what PAC are going to do. So if they're going to take it, okay, that'll be tricky. If they're not, that's going to be dead simple. The Economy Committee can take this forward, but it's in the hands of PAC right now. But that's what I would suggest you do. Write to the department, ask about their scheduled review of the energy strategy.
Members happy? Yeah, okay. Draft minutes, members, page 7. You will see a copy of the draft minutes from our last meeting on the 15th, okay, just the 15th of October. Are members content that it's true and accurate record of the committee's deliberations? 10? Yeah. Matters arising, members, there are no matters arising on the agenda. So we'll just invite now the Insolvency Practitioners Association forward. They're going to be given evidence in relation to the Insolvency Amendment Bill. This session will be recorded for the official report and Hansard. Members are referred to the Clerk's cover note at page 19, and also a written submission from the Insolvency Practitioners Association at page 25. So I welcome both Lynn and Antoinette along today, and we obviously welcome your input, and we'll just hand over to yourselves now for maybe a short update and presentation, and then we'll open to members for questions. So you're very welcome.
No, please, Lynn, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Director of Policy and Regulation at the Insolvency Practitioners Association. I'm an insolvency practitioner myself, was in practice for many years. So obviously we are a regulator of insolvency practitioners across the UK, all of the UK, including Northern Ireland. So from a regulatory point of view, since the changes that came in 2016 to the England and Wales legislation, we've obviously sought to enforce that, and we have monitored and regulated our IPs for that. And so we, I think, are quite well placed to be able to identify any issues that we've identified from the England and Wales introduction of the rules, because the proposed changes here mirror those to a large degree. And so I think from our perspective, we're able to give you some insight into how it's operated over in England and Wales. So that's why I'm kind of here today, to help you understand how it's worked in practice, to see if there might be any challenges if you introduce it over here.
I am also a member of the board of the Insolvency Practitioners Association, but I'm also a practicing licensed insolvency practitioner here in Northern Ireland, and I've spent, as I think most members will have read the paper, many years working across in England, and short time my gap here in Scotland as well. So, as Lynn said, we have a very broad perspective of the changes which have been enacted in the England and Wales framework, and being on the other side of it, working in practice here in Northern Ireland, the impact of not having the the parity and the harmony of the same rules, and I guess apart from taking the insolvency practitioner perspective and the regulator perspective, I also have a mission, I guess, from the view of working on the ground on a day-to-day basis within these two sets of frameworks and the difficulty it poses, plus, as I said in the paper, the difference it will make with having the amendments brought into practice for every stakeholder, not just the IPs. So, again, here today to help you understand that and reflect on some of the comments where other attendees have made in previous committee sessions as well on the actual changes that are to be made. Because, it's not just necessary, it's logical, and it's working quite well in the England and Wales framework.
Thank you. Would you mind maybe just taking a bit of time just to take us through the paper, just for the benefit, obviously, of members?
Let me do that. So, well, first of all, obviously, we're I think the essence and the tone will certainly say that we are very much encouraging the committee to enact and very much supporting the changes. As I said, both Lynn and I are, and many other individuals working within the IPA and just in day-to-day practice. If you work in England or in Northern Ireland, but you take Northern Ireland cases, you come up against this on a day-to-day basis. And certainly with the delay in bringing the two sets of legislation in line over the last few years has had a number of problems in that regard. So we're very pleased to be able to provide the evidence and support the enactment of the bill. As I said, the core of our support would rest upon the fact that the changes will streamline the administration on a day-to-day basis in insolvency cases, and enhancing creditor returns sounds like quite a big delivery point, but in many cases the pot of money available for creditors will be impacted by the costs of that administration. So anything we can do to reduce costs and efficiency and effectiveness in the rules that we have to abide by certainly will reduce those costs, and therefore the pot of money available for creditors naturally will be a bit more buoyant and hopefully result in more recovery, which is in essence the point of insolvency. A lot of the time it isn't just terminating and tidying up when a business fails. There also is recovery and reorganisation, and for whether it's an indebted individual or a business that has basically come to the end of its life, it is important that insolvency practitioners and other stakeholders, solicitors, barristers, regulators, and everybody who works in the framework has a set of rules that will allow for efficiency and effectiveness, which are the hallmarks of a well-run framework, be it in England, Wales or Northern Ireland. So streamlining and enhancing the return with the legislative harmony that this will bring it's just a logical step. There was a word that I used in the paper, which I in reading it here, bureaucratising. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but bureaucracy is something that we all have to deal with in our day-to-day jobs. So anything we can do to take the unnecessary red tape out of procedures is a welcome change in any organisation, in any framework. But the key changes which will make the biggest difference, if I can just speak to those for a minute, the pandemic taught us all about the need to be able to move very quickly, to be able to change and to be able to be flexible in how we do business. So, it makes sense that in a legislative framework where, we deal with the failure of business and the impact of debt, that framework also has to be flexible and to be able to move very quickly to keep pace with the business society that we work in. So being able to use digital and remote or electronic means of communication, that seems like, why would anybody object to that in this day and age? So that particular change would seem very, very logical, and inconsequential to everybody else outside this room, but extremely important to us working within the framework when we don't have that opportunity to work with digital or virtual means. So that's an extremely important aspect of the changes. Well, I spoke about cost a minute ago, and this is one of the areas where it will reduce cost, because if I can speak to, on a day-to-day basis in Northern Ireland, if I'm working on a case here, I have to send everything out in the post. I still have to use a lot of paper, and this takes time, it costs more money, and in the alternative arrangements, being able to bring stakeholders into the administration, via Zoom or via Teams meetings or email, having all of that at our disposal, which you would have in any other organisation, is a bit of a no-brainer, but it's also a lot cheaper. So not having to fork out costs and time for the current situation. Also, most businesses these days operate in using all of the virtual tools that we have available to us, so it makes sense that we can do that as well. There was some, I've already made comments about the speed of administration, and I won't dwell too much on that. I think that's sort of obvious for everybody in the room who works in administration or with bureaucracy. Taking that away obviously is a great step. There was a couple of comments, I think, just to speak about some of the key changes. There was a couple of comments from other attendees at committee previously about some of the very specific changes, like in bankruptcy, removing the requirement for a statement of affairs, and there were some concerns over that. But again, working in practice on a day-to-day basis in Northern Ireland and having experienced the impact of those changes in England and Wales, we definitely don't see that is going to be an issue. The questionnaire, which is issued by the Insolvency Service at the commencement of a bankruptcy to a bankrupt, would, in my opinion and in the opinion of most insolvency practitioners, would far outweigh the benefit of a statement of affairs. That would give you far more information, gives you much more intel to go on about what is going on in that bankrupt's affairs. And in some cases, a statement of affairs would certainly not tell you as much. So removing that as a mandatory requirement is, again, of no real consequence. So we appreciate our colleagues in the Law Society had concerns about some of the legal aspects of that, but we think their concerns were noted, but in practice it really won't have that much of an impact. And the Insolvency Service, who see the bankrupts on a day-to-day basis, have developed the questionnaire that they use, which will effectively replace the statement of affairs quite extensively to ensure it gives you what we need. The other change, which is essential and will give practitioners the ability and powers that are not there at the minute, to be able to assign claims to third parties. And again, the number of times I've been appointed to a case where I can see there very much has been conduct by directors which should be pursued, and should be, there should be recovery for creditors who have lost out because of that conduct and have not been able to pursue it because of lack of funding, lack of funds. So to be able to pursue some of those actions is very, very important. And again, in the England and Wales framework, that's a day-to-day occurrence, because it brings that accountability that we all need to make sure that where there has been conduct unfit and has led to losses, or there's culpability to be pursued, we should have the toolkit that allows us to do that. And unfortunately, it's usually funding that prevents us from doing it. So that is a very, very, very important change. There was, I know, some concerns raised previously that there isn't a market here for that type of assignment, and I would suggest maybe that's because we don't have the rules to allow us to do it. So the market will very much develop once the rule is changed. So I don't see that as an issue. Some of the more minor points, which I don't think have been discussed in the committee stage, having more access to what's called the prescribed part. Again, when we think about the body of creditors involved in an insolvency and the different classes of creditors, they range from those with security to those without security, who are basically at the end of the queue when it comes to any sort of recoveries being doled out. So having access to this element called prescribed part gives them maybe an opportunity to actually get some money back in the insolvency, because they will benefit from a small section of money that's set aside from a creditor with what's called a floating charge. So having that change, unsecured creditors are usually the most exposed in any insolvency. So giving them even if it's a small possibility of a small pot of money, it's some recovery. And in a very big case, it could be quite a significant fund, that's a very, very important change. But I think the consistency with the England and Wales regime is essential, whether it's a small case or a big case. So we have day-to-day expertise in how these rules and these amendments, when they were brought in England and Wales, we've had quite a few years of running with those changes now. And I think, as Lynn and I, from the insolvency practitioner's point of view and the IPA's point of view, would remind everybody that there is a review of those rules ongoing all the time. And the Insolvency Service have, committed to reviewing aspects of those changes which may not be working as well as they should and may require further tweaking. So we would encourage the committee to maybe take account of that paper that has been written as well, because it would be unfortunate to take all of this time and all of this effort to bring the amendment bill to enact it and then to only have to change it again when further tweaks are made, which we believe are imminent to the bill as it stands and as the law and the rules as they're operated in England and Wales. So it probably, I see you looking at each other that you weren't aware of that paper.
Well, I personally wasn't, but maybe the clerk has.
No, I'm not aware of that paper.
Well,
We could send you the
Well,
link.
we'll send you a copy of it. So
that would be so. That's why it's beneficial.
it's
Obviously,
very
to have
important.
yourselves
Exactly.
here.
Yes, exactly. And that's why we're delighted to be able to bring these points, because that piece of work going on in parallel to the work being done here is very important, that there is harmony. And if you're going to make changes, make them all now instead of having to come back here again in maybe another year and take up an awful lot more committee time to make those tweaks. So, but it also is reflective of the fact that these rules have been, and we'll call them, these laws have been amended and are working quite well in England and Wales, but they're constantly under review also, and it wasn't just a one and done. There's a constant review of this, and changes will be made where necessary, where things aren't working so well. And just on that basis, there was, I think, quite a bit of discussion at previous committee meetings about one of the other significant changes in corporate insolvency, in particularly about liquidations, where you'll have heard the phrase deemed consent is being brought in. And I think we just wanted to make the point, I'm not sure if, again, because of our intimate knowledge of all of the insolvency law, deemed consent is an alternative. It's not, we're just simply moving away with these changes from the mandatory holding of physical creditor meetings. It's not, deemed consent is not replacing the ability to have physical meetings. We now will just have the option to have a physical meeting, a virtual meeting, or a meeting by correspondence, or resolutions by correspondence. It's basically bringing us some alternatives, and deemed consent is just an alternative. It's not going to be used in every case. It's not going to be appropriate for every case. And in fact, the actual practice of deemed consent is in itself, contained by a number of thresholds and circumstances when you can use it. And as an insolvency practitioner working, in both jurisdictions, it very much is used in only very specific cases where there will be absolutely no assets, there's absolutely no money, and there is no need really to involve creditors and to just make the decision. It really is only used when you want to become appointed effectively, and rather than having to issue an awful lot of paperwork and have an awful lot of meetings, simply be appointed to a case where the directors are funding your appointment. There's no money in the company, and there's an awful lot of cost. And the number of times when I'm speaking to a director in Northern Ireland versus maybe a director in the England and Wales jurisdiction, and even up to yesterday I was speaking to a director who is facing a petition in the High Court, and I'm explaining the costs and saying, unfortunately, to appoint me as a voluntary liquidator, there's an element of cost which I can do nothing about because of the way the rules are here in Northern Ireland at the minute, and the steps I have to go to so you can appoint me, compared to England, where in your particular case I can do a practice called deemed consent. I'd be appointed virtually, without, with speed and without any objection. And in that process, it still allows creditors to object. They can still demand I call a physical meeting. They still have the power to, I think there was concerns raised that deemed consent was giving IPs far too much leverage and far too much discretion. But there's still a process to follow, and we are, as I'm here as a member of the IPA, as an insolvency practitioner, we are governed very closely and monitored very closely on everything we do. So, using a deemed consent procedure is very much to give us that speed and to be able to, deal with cases that don't need all of the red tape of appointment. But if we were using it inappropriately, we very much will be brought to account for that very, very quickly. And a final note on deemed consent: most insolvency practitioners wouldn't want to use it because we would want creditor involvement to vote on resolutions, particularly as one of the most important resolutions can often be our fees. So we need creditors to say yea or nay to the fees that we want to be paid for doing the job, and you certainly can't do that with a deemed consent process, and you can't get resolutions approved. So in truth, most insolvency practitioners would opt for a meeting where there will be voting and there will be resolutions passed. So I think the concerns about deemed consent are noted, but they really are not that extravagant. And it is just to mark that it's an option, it's not the only route to follow. And that's what the changes are bringing us, is a series of options and alternatives, which I think is very, very important. The last thing really I would say is obviously the efficiency and the way in which practitioners can be monitored. For the regulatory body to be monitoring and governing IPs working under two different jurisdictions and with two different sets of laws, obviously is prone to, difficulties, but also for practitioners, it's prone to error. And that brings us back to the cost issue. The number of times a practitioner in England could fall foul of maybe missing something that's in the legislation here and making errors, it just costs more time and more money to fix. So having a streamlined, set of procedures that mirrors England and Wales would stop all of that happening. And just in closing, I would say, in any business society or the business element of society, the hallmarks of a well-run and a well-governed framework is effectiveness and efficiency, and more importantly, contemporary and being reflective of the society in which business runs. So it sort of stands to reason that the framework that comes into play when things go wrong in business or in individuals' commercial lives, that framework should also be efficient and effective and reflective of the contemporary society that we live in. So the digital, changes that allow us to do this, as well as the speed that the amendments will give us in day-to-day practice, it just brings both the business sector and the insolvency sector together. And it is reflective of the sort of contemporary Northern Ireland that we all live in. And it's not about, it works in England and Wales, so we should have it here. It's not about that. It's about just the business frameworks, and the insolvency framework should reflect those. So I think that's it really. I think all stakeholders, not just insolvency practitioners, will urge the committee to bring this bill into the enactment stage as quickly as possible. As you know, we're having the Insolvency Practitioner Association's roadshow today, which is, we're very grateful for the change to the scheduling, so we could be here and we can also be there. So we're hopeful to be able to bring some good news back to them, because every year on year the Insolvency Practitioners Association works incredibly hard with what is a small group of insolvency practitioners here, but we have quite a loud voice in the whole insolvency regime, I think, as Lynn will attest to. And every year the institutional speakers at that roadshow always ask the same question, when are we going to get this changes, and when are we going to get this changes? So it's great that this year both the regulators and the Insolvency Service, who will be speaking later on, hopefully will be able to give a very positive account of things from today, that we're almost there, hopefully. So I think that's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you both very much. That was really insightful, very useful, and certainly some of the questions that I had down to ask, you've already answered them. So we can certainly follow those up, and particularly in relation to the work that's ongoing in England and Wales and that review piece, we will follow up as well. So thank you for that. Just then, one question from me in terms of, I don't know if you've seen some of the evidence last week from the bar. They had suggested that changes might be needed in respect of the treatment of creditors of undisputed debts. They had said that in England and Wales, an office holder can present a statutory demand within 21 days, whereas in Northern Ireland, a court judgment is required. Could you maybe speak to that a bit in terms of whether or not you believe, or whether or not you have concerns in respect of that, but also how maybe that could be dealt with in the bill?
Yes, I was speaking to colleagues about the comments made about this last week, and we did watch the session back to see what colleagues from, I believe it was the KC from the Northern Ireland Bar, William, who made a lot of comments about that. And I think his point, which would be the same as my point, the legislation is already there for the process for if you are owed money and you're at a point if you've tried all of your recovery methods. Statutory demand is the tool that you have available. If you're owed money at a certain threshold, you can issue a statutory demand, and the debtor, be it a company or an individual, has that time period. And it's not just to pay the debt. I think I would correct some of the comments made last week. The 21 days, I mean, yes, obviously the solution will be to pay the debt and make it go away, but you could also secure the debt or come to an agreement to repay the debt as a solution or as a way of dealing with the statutory demand. It isn't just, I would just correct that point, it isn't just a 21-day pay the debt or else. It's 21 days to deal with the matter is the point of the statutory demand. And bringing statute into it means they have usually tried everything else, whereas in England and Wales there will be collection procedures, there may be court judgments because obviously the court is a bit more accessible, I think. There will be bailiffs, there will be all sorts of collection procedures, and a statutory demand is often the last resort, and it brings that whole process of chasing and debt collection to an end, because you've got 21 days now to deal with it, whether it's securing it, paying it, or negotiating an outcome that the creditor will be happy not to take the next stage. So what I think William was referring to last week was the legislation is there for that process, but what has happened, I think, in Northern Ireland is more of a practice direction where the stage normally after statutory demand is you have then, as the holder of the statutory demand, the creditor, you have 4 months in which to then decide to wind up the company or to bring the person to bankruptcy, to petition for their bankruptcy. That's the two outcomes that you have available to you. So I think what he was saying, we can't do that here in Northern Ireland, but it's more of a practice rather than legislation. So I really think what he was referring to is that the changes need to be made to actually just line that up and just make it a very, very succinct process, and there's no middle bit that we have to follow to follow on with the petition in that section. So as I said, the law is already written for that, but it was just the practice direction on a day-to-day basis. There's been some local changes to that process, and I think court changes really. So,
thank you for that. I've only one indicated member, and that's Sinead, who's online. Sinead, can you hear us? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's thank you very much, Antoinette and Lynn, for your presentation, and has been really, really helpful. Just a quick question. I didn't really catch. You were saying that a review takes place of the legislation in England and Wales regularly, and tweaks are being considered at the moment. Have you any time frame in that in terms of changes that may be coming forward?
Well, Lynn will definitely pick that piece up.
So as part of the introduction of the rules, the changes to the rules in England and Wales, the Insolvency Service committed to review it every 5 years. And so it's part of that ongoing review that was part of introducing it in the first place. And I don't know whether you'll have something similar to have an ongoing review process. But then they publish They ask for evidence, they ask for people's views on how it's working, and then they produce a report that summarises those concerns, those points, and that is published. And within that document, the Insolvency Service have committed to make some changes, particularly to the CVL regime. So they've taken on board the comments of the people that are operating this legislation in practice and the regulators, and they've committed to make some changes. But of course, they don't say when, because it's all dependent on time, parliamentary time, etc. Some of the suggested changes might require changes to primary legislation. I think that is unlikely. But they might be able to make some tweaks in the background. But again, they don't commit to a particular time frame, just to say that we're going to look at this and we're going to consider changes. So it's a very useful document because it does set out some of the changes that had unintended consequences actually when you come to use them in practice. And it's those kind of tweaks that they're looking to change. But the CVL process particularly they're looking at.
Yeah, it's just that, I mean, that's really helpful because we need to know that and you know, so that this legislation is really up to date. It's not just absorbing, it's reflecting as well any change of circumstances. And, you know, Antoinette, it kind of got me thinking as well, you know, that increased benefit of alignment and just how we operate in Northern Ireland and businesses operate as well on a cross-border basis. Have you any thoughts and views on that in terms of IPs, you know, operating in that context? And is there any learnings we can take from there as well?
Can I just say that, so obviously as a regulator we have made sure that the England and Wales IPs have implemented the changes properly and have complied fully. So in terms of have we seen any evidence of failing to comply in the last few years? No. Generally speaking, the IPs in England and Wales coped very well with the changes without any kind of regulatory action being required. But part of that process that we introduced at the IPA back in 2016 was we did a lot of education, a lot of training of England and Wales IPs. We rolled out training all around the country to make sure that IPs were prepared for the changes and that they understood what was going to be required. And from an IPA perspective, we would like to do that again in Northern Ireland. So I appreciate that there will be some Northern Irish IPs who do cross-border and do you know, work in both jurisdictions, but equally there'll be people who don't. And so we don't just want you to introduce the changes and then say, well, there you go, off you go, get on with it. From a regulatory point of view, we want people to be compliant. We want these changes to mean that we've got effective and efficient regulation, and part of that is education and training. So we would like to work very closely with the IPs in Northern Ireland to help with the integration and the implementation of the changes, rather than just say, there you go, off you go.
And in order, Sinead, to make sure that, you know, there is confidence amongst practitioners that when the changes are brought in, it was the same in England and Wales. There was quite a, you know, a preamble beforehand and quite a lead time before the changes took place, and then when they were implemented, the IPA as a regulatory body, as well as its members, you know, took a great deal of time to learn and make sure that there was full confidence and full understanding. But, you know, with a significant change, like in any organisation, you know, admittedly there were hiccups in the way everybody was practicing, and there was a lot of learnings taken from that as well, I think. So when these changes hopefully are implemented here in the very near future, we would suggest that same process will be followed in terms of outlining what the changes are, specifically what the pitfalls might be in moving towards those changes, and also obviously, as we have today, underlining the benefits of getting to grips with those changes very, very quickly. I would add again, as a practitioner here in Northern Ireland, there are obviously practitioners here who exclusively work in Northern Ireland and don't necessarily do cases in both jurisdictions. So obviously that training will be incredibly important to those. But I would suggest having a foot in both jurisdictions, that actually I would very much want to, you know, put myself through an awful lot of training to make sure I'm lined up, that we can actually effectively work, and you know, the regulators and the lawmakers can be sure that the practitioners who are, you know, operating within the framework on a day-to-day basis know what we're doing. So administrative gaps, you know, causes non-compliance all the time. So equally, changing all of that administration, the only risk would be, you know, mistakes that we've learned from the other regime.
That you know, has come through, I suppose, in all of the evidence that we've received as well. That a high degree of training for any new framework that comes along is so important. Thank you very much. That's been very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Sinead. Just one more member, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. The Law Society also indicated in its submission that there was a need for safeguards for creditor inclusivity in digital processes where creditors who do not have digital assets are concerned. Does the IPA have any concerns in this regard?
Well, again, I mean, I can take that one. Again, you know, having practiced in the alternate regime, again, I would say, and yes, we did note that point from last week, I think, as well at the committee session. In using digital toolkit, you know, it's an oddity really that when you're taking a case, you know, in order to inform creditors or a pool of stakeholders that an insolvency is happening, or there may be a meeting happening, or there may be a decision, you do actually have to usually write to them in some way to make sure they know where to go to use the digital tools. So there's, you know, there is always a communication process, and insolvency practitioners are required to take every step possible to make sure that they have informed everybody that's affected by the insolvency or the process that's about to be followed. And, you know, there's a very heavy penalty for not complying with that ethical duty. You know, we have to act with a great deal of independence and objectivity. It's part of our, you know, the essence of what we do in our code of ethics, but also what we do every day. And to make sure that all stakeholders are involved and have had the opportunity, whether it's to vote or to participate, is an essential part of what we are monitored to make sure we do.
There's always going to be that mix of digital / traditional forms. There has to
always
be.
There has to be. I mean, in order, if I was to invite you all to a virtual meeting of creditors, I have to communicate with you somehow, whether it's email or in writing, to give you the details. In practice, what the actual platform or the toolkit would be, possibly writing to you or emailing you and giving you an access to a website or a portal with a password and your own personal PIN, so that you can access documents or that you can actually attend a meeting, much in the same way as we have colleagues here today attending. You know, they've all had a meeting link. It's the exact same thing.
So the safeguard essentially is that everybody will have that ability to access both forms of communications.
Yes, and I think if you were to see any of the communications that we send out on a day-to-day basis, whether you're operating in England and Wales or in Northern Ireland, every single letter I say and I send out will have links for those of you who want to just click the link to go and look at a 48-page document about rules. And every single letter will say, if you'd like a hard copy, just ring me. Every single correspondence will say it, because we want to make sure everybody's aware. It's a sometimes a very adult set of rules, so if we can simplify it for anyone, we will. But that's our job, is to make sure everybody's involved.
And can I just pick up on just one thing? So what, in practice, what an insolvency practitioner will do, they will see how the company has already communicated with the creditors. So were they used to communicating electronically? Did the creditors want information by email or whatever? So the insolvency practitioner will, as a starting point, see how the company engaged with its creditors, and then see what the best form of communication is. Should it be digital? Should it be by post? How was the company dealing with its creditors?
And I think it also brings us to the last point, really, about the changes in the bill, alongside the actual legislation itself and changing of you know, the 96 clauses. There is, in parallel to that, a huge amount of practice, guidance and regulation from our regulatory body, from you know, other elements of working within this framework, be it our own monitoring that happens on a day-to-day basis from our regulatory body, and, you know, tons and tons of practice guidance on how to do these jobs. So, you know, there will be an awful lot around that, making sure you take every step, and you certainly will be brought to account if you didn't take every step to make sure that everybody was included, and you certainly will be asked the question, why didn't you include that creditor or that person or go to every length to make sure they were involved.
Okay, well, look, thank you both for taking the time to come along today. I wish you well in your event this afternoon or later this morning. And as I say, I very much value your input and answers to our questions. So thank you both very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, members, Clerk, is there any, in terms of follow-up?
I think you're very right.
It's well covered. Is there anything that you think we should write off to the department to seek? Obviously, the piece. Thank you very much. Thank you. The papers, in terms of the review of their regulations, or we going to seek advice in terms of where that's at?
I think we can write to the Insolvency Practitioners Association and just seek sight of that paper that they referred to. So these are ongoing reviews that they're doing of insolvency practitioner rules in another jurisdiction, which might very well inform our own legislation. But I'd already written to the department about all the stuff that the Law Society and the Bar of Northern Ireland had said, and just asked them, what do you think, as the committee had authorised me to do at previous meetings. So I think that's it. I think they did actually answer your questions.
They did. They answered all the questions, yeah, absolutely.
It's quite interesting.
It was what? Quite
I thought
interesting.
it was quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're going to now move into closed session for the next item on the agenda, which is the Examiner Statutory Public Session. Members, and we're now going to move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the Apprenticeship Action Plan. We're going to receive evidence from the department in relation to the plan. We'll just give them a few minutes to come in. Members will be aware the department launched the skills plan as well last Wednesday, just after our meeting. There's a clerk's cover note at page 723, and I'll refer members to a copy of the action plan, the apprenticeship action plan, the skills action plan, and indeed the briefing paper from Work Plus. So we'll just invite the members forward. Yeah.
And,
okay.
In tabled papers, members, sorry, just at the front of tabled papers is the department's apprenticeship action plan covering note.
It's on page 14 of your table papers. So can I welcome Kathryn McCamley, Deputy Director of Apprenticeships, Careers and Vocational Education Division at the Department for the Economy, Erin Savage, Head of Apprenticeship Policy and Strategic Engagement, and Michael Harris, Head of Apprenticeships Delivery and Performance. You're all very welcome. So I'm going to just hand over to yourselves now for the opening statement, and then I'll invite members for questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today to update you on the Apprenticeship Action Plan. My name is Kathryn McCamley, as you said, Deputy Director of Apprenticeships, Careers and Vocational Education, and I'm supported today by Erin, Head of Apprenticeship Policy and Strategic Engagement, and Michael, Head of Apprenticeships Delivery and Performance. I'll briefly provide you with a general update of our apprenticeship provision and present a summary of our Apprenticeship Action Plan. All vocational qualifications play a vital role in helping people gain real skills, build confidence and progress into meaningful employment. And apprenticeships in particular are pivotal in delivering the Minister's economic vision, with a good job a fundamental part of the package and regionally balanced delivery provided through a wide network of training organisations. When Minister Archibald launched the Apprenticeship Action Plan in August, she highlighted the department's commitment to improvement, growth and inclusivity in apprenticeships. And we are working to ensure that every learner, regardless of background, has access to high quality opportunities, building a more skilled, innovative and inclusive economy. So just to set a little bit of context, apprenticeships are first and foremost employment, and that's employment including 20% of time in work spent in training that leads to achievement of high quality qualifications designed and recognised by industry. We have over 100 apprenticeship frameworks here, with developments every year to open new pathways to meet emerging skills needs. As you'll see from the briefing provided, there has been substantial growth in numbers on programmes at levels 2 and 3, with a 40% increase in occupancy since 2019. And we also have significant growth in HLAs, that's higher level apprenticeships, in our further education colleges and our universities, with new starts on programme more than doubling since 2018 till today. Latest published statistics show there are now over 11,800 participants undertaking an apprenticeship at level 2 or level 3, and a further 2,650 undertaking a higher level apprenticeship from level 4 to level 7. Apprenticeships provide a job creation mechanism that allow young people to start their careers and older people to change their careers, all whilst working, earning a wage and gaining recognised portable qualifications. In terms of the taxation landscape, the apprenticeship levy is a tax on business with an annual pay bill over £3 million. Locally, we receive funding through the block grant for apprenticeship provision, and we fully fund apprenticeship training for all private sector businesses with no cap on access. Since the launch of fully funded apprenticeships for the over 25s across all sectors in September 23, we've seen a significant uptick in older apprentices, promoting lifelong learning and also providing pathways to better paying careers, particularly in previously underserved sectors such as health and social care, and most notably for women, with 60% of new apprentices over the age of 25 being women. Stronger apprenticeships are one of our significant success stories. However, we know there's always room for improvement. Using data and evaluation, we've worked hard to see how this route could be more effective for a wider range of people, for the labour market as a whole, and for our economy in meeting our skills and productivity challenges. The Apprenticeship Action Plan is a culmination of the breadth of planning and activity across the system to develop our offer and to make it as effective as possible. The three themes of the Action Plan are to improve, grow and include. Under improve, the Department is currently spending over £48 million annually in delivery of apprenticeship training as growing numbers of individuals and employers realise the opportunities that apprenticeships offer. A few of our highlights under the Improve theme are 2 programme refreshes. The Apprenticeships 25 programme and the HLA 25 programme have both launched as of September, making space for iterative change through evolving contracts to include greater flexibility to trial new policy initiatives. Contracts have been awarded with 10 new providers coming on stream alongside our stable base of statutory partners and private training organisations, broadening our reach and ensuring a sustainable future. Our apprenticeship content used to be directed by government with a cut and copy model that relied on imported qualifications. But a number of years ago we introduced sectoral partnerships to make sure that employers' views are foremost in developing and refreshing our apprenticeship frameworks in Northern Ireland. Sectoral partnerships, of which we now have 18 across 18 sectors, are composed of employers, sector representative bodies, education providers, and are supported by the Department and by colleagues in SIA. Building on this work, we want to strengthen these partnerships and diversify them, and we want to see more SME representation and to make sure our pathways from level 2 traineeships onward are really stable and provide opportunity for folk to move up those pathways. We will explore opportunities for cross-border apprenticeships, and we've been working with colleagues in DeFeris in the south to design a programme of work for shared island fund consideration. We aim to best understand synergies and opportunities to support an all-island economy, to meet shared workforce challenges and enhance portability wherever possible. Under the grow theme, growing the apprenticeship system in Northern Ireland is vital for unlocking economic potential, addressing workforce challenges and to ensure more individuals and employers benefit from enhanced training and qualifications, strengthening the overall economy. We also want to unlock public sector potential. The public sector employs 25% of the workforce but has low apprenticeship uptake, and this is primarily a consequence of our funding position. But our ambition is to use the tools we have, our networks, our knowledge, the expertise around good quality apprenticeship provision to showcase how effective apprenticeships can be as a talent development tool. We also want to support more employers, especially SMEs. Only 7% of small businesses currently offer apprenticeships compared to 52% of large employers. Given that SMEs are the backbone of our economy, we need to ensure that those who want to use apprenticeships can and can access support, navigate the system and benefit. Initiatives like apprenticeship navigators and improved communications will help more employers and individuals understand and engage with the system. Within the Grow theme, we also want to pilot innovative models like shared apprenticeships, where an apprentice works for more than one employer on various projects throughout their apprenticeship. This approach is particularly suited to industries that operate on a number of medium-term projects, such as in the construction sector. And I know that Barry Nielsen was here to give evidence for the Skills Council, and he had identified that he'd worked on that previously. Many employers plan to offer apprenticeships in the future, but need clearer guidance and promotion, and therefore our growth strategies include advertising campaigns, case studies and enhanced employer guidance. We aim to work with focus groups of employers to test our materials and to identify how we need to communicate differently. Under our include theme, our data shows that apprenticeship can have significant benefits, but to date these benefits have not been equally shared in the population, with most apprenticeships being undertaken by young men and with lower uptake for disabled people than we would like. Making apprenticeships more inclusive in Northern Ireland is essential for both social equity and economic resilience. Our inclusion strand will help to build a diverse and skilled workforce. A more inclusive system brings in diverse perspectives and talents, which strengthen innovation and problem solving in the workplace. Through the Apprenticeship Inclusion Challenge Fund, we seek to encourage innovation in how apprenticeships are delivered and supported. We know we don't have all the answers, and the fund promotes partnership working to bring together experts from business, from education and from the community and voluntary sector to devise and then test new approaches to driving up recruitment and retention of underrepresented groups in apprenticeships, so particularly women, people with disabilities and marginalised communities. To support people with special educational needs, many young people with SEN face barriers transitioning into work, and we want to pilot a different system of apprenticeship for those learners here, working closely with the post-19 SEN team in the department to ensure a joined-up approach. This may include different frameworks with a different approach to numeracy and literacy qualifications to prevent these current requirements placing roadblocks in the way of our SEN learners, and considering what additional supports are required to make an apprenticeship into a career for a lifetime. This series of pilots will generate evidence-based policy recommendations to make the system more effective and more equitable. In summary, activity on the action plan commitments to grow, improve and increase inclusion in the system are well underway, and we've provided some detail at an individual action level as part of your written briefing. We're committed to working collaboratively with our training providers, with our employer networks and across sectors to address ongoing challenges while continuing to strengthen our evidence base, apply rigorous evaluation and deliver innovative new pathways that support the economy. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kathryn, for that very detailed summary of the paper, and we obviously value the submission that you provided as well, and hopefully members will have had time to go through that. There's quite a number of members have indicated to ask questions, so I'm not going to hog the floor too long. Just a couple of questions for me. Kathryn, when you were speaking, you'd touched on the apprenticeship 2025. I think you said it was launched in September, is that right? In terms of how does that differ then from previous years? You mentioned about 10 new providers. So what is the difference in terms of apprenticeship 2025 and what happened last year, for example?
Okay, so our apprenticeship programs are delivered on like a business case approach, and then there's a public procurement that goes out in parallel with an SLA process for our statutory partners. The main differences are around our funding rates. Michael, would you like to talk in the detail?
Yes, so the main change we made was increasing the funding support to training providers and the employer incentive as well at the end. So that was the main focus. I mean, the scheme has been working, this is probably the third or fourth iteration of apprenticeships and it's been working really well. We, under Apprenticeships 21, we had 20 private training organisations as well as colleges and CAFRE, and now that's expanded through the new contract. Up to now we've got 30 private training organisations as well as the colleges and CAFRE. So that would have been where our focus was on, is trying to get that sweet spot in terms of increasing the support to training providers, because we hadn't increased those levels from 2021. So effectively we're funding the training providers to deliver that off-the-job training element, and that's where that money is going to.
And how much additional was provided this year in comparison with last year?
The funding uplift was 20% funding uplift for training providers and for the employer incentive.
Kathryn, do you want
I was just going to note, I suppose, the other main difference in terms of the public procurement was last time round we made sure that we left space, that if we were able to bring in all age apprenticeships, we could do that through contract variation. This time round we've tried to make sure there's space within our procurement approach to test new work. So we knew at the point of procurement development that we would be looking at pilots in certain areas, and we've made sure that we've left space that we can do that through contract variation, just following all our public procurement rules the right way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Another question I had was, it was raised by Work Plus to the committee previously. It was in relation, and you'll be aware of this obviously, in relation to the sort of one-stop shop application and sort of a register, a portal, if you like, where people could go and to obviously seek advice, etc. Where are we at in terms of the department? Is that something that's been looked at?
I think, first of all, we're very familiar with the work of Work Plus, and we really welcome the work they do to support the system. I think they put in place a really comprehensive system that supports their client base. We have not got a one-stop shop for applications for apprenticeships. What we're hoping to do through the careers portal development is make sure that there's one place for information,
and advertising,
and through Job Apply NI we have instituted a button for apprenticeship jobs, but we don't stipulate that employers have to apply that way. We know that employers choose to advertise their vacancies in lots of different ways, and I suppose we welcome that, but also need to make sure that it's open and transparent and that there's all the right places. But I suppose we have employers of such a variety of sizes within apprenticeship, from employers that run their own, almost like a milk round type competition for their higher level apprenticeships, to local employers that work with their local college and they advertise their vacancies in their local town. So I suppose we need to be mindful of that as well.
I suppose part of the challenge though is that for some people it can be about who you know, and as you say, it's about that sort of transparency, and if there was some sort of like a one-stop shop in terms of those advertisements, it may be more, I suppose, open for people to see what's available. There's a list of members, so I'm going to go to Kate first.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I think the work on apprenticeships is some of the most important work that's being done in our economy, so I'm really interested in this. And I suppose just to follow on from the Deputy Chair's point about how complex the skills ecosystem is and how challenging that can be to navigate. At the NI Chamber conference last week, the head of the chair of Skills England gave a really great analogy of how skills is like the London Underground map, and there are all these really brilliant dots, but it's like the underground map without the lines, and so how you create better connection. And I guess my question is how do we improve connection, but also given that stat that we hear all the time about how 32% of employers would like to offer apprenticeships but only 8% do. I think it's more than just comms, because a lot of SMEs can't put their head above the water most of the time to do anything else. So how do we join the dots better, and how do we make it possible for those SMEs to take on apprenticeships who really want to?
Really good question, because it is something that we hear all the time. I think that was why we've put the Apprenticeship Navigator pilot into the action plan, specifically to try and identify what sort of hand-holding and support an SME needs to be able to connect the dots in their local area. Now, I suppose when we are commissioning our network of apprenticeship providers, one of the things we ask them is about how they engage with employers, how they support their employers. So we commission specifically for that, and I think many employers, once they have a relationship with a training provider that delivers the skills they need, those relationships work really well. But sometimes for somebody who's never dipped their toe into the apprenticeship system before, it's that level of investment of time and energy to understand that's the challenge, and I think that's what we would like an Apprenticeship Navigator to do. We work fairly closely with a number of the economic development teams within the local councils as well, and these are the issues that they're raising with us too. So I think it's one for continued engagement, because part of it is about apprenticeship, but part of it is about understanding the skills system as a whole. I think our further education colleges are very committed to engaging with businesses on the ground in all their areas in terms of best understanding the needs of business and then being able to match them to the range of products that are on offer. But there's always more work to be done.
And that's really good to hear. I know they're really great examples within the councils, and they have that grassroots kind of knowledge and reach that maybe others don't. In your evidence, you mentioned about the sectoral partnerships. How is our skills agenda being targeted in those areas with sectoral action plans? Is there any work being done there? The department has the sectoral action plans, and I was just wondering if the skills agenda is...
I suppose we engage where there is specific skills actions. So, for example, under the Green Skills Action Plan, there's engagement directly with Erin's responsible for our sectoral team. On the agri-food sectoral plan, we have an action, and I think our sectoral partnership has actually taken forward the wider skills piece of work, secretariated by Kathryn, so we try and be as joined up as we can there. I know that in terms of our city deals work, I suppose that's the broader kind of skills agenda of the department, but there's a bit of engagement there around sort of what HLA routes are required to support that future study deal requirement. We commission new HLA development on an annual basis, so that will be coming up shortly. So there's always opportunities for new pathways and an understanding of what size and scope of provision is required in each area.
Thank you. And just the final question that we hear all the time around apprenticeships is how massive the apprenticeship levy is as an issue. And I just wonder if you had any information about when the Minister last raised devolution and reform of the levy with the UK government, if that's something you're aware of.
I know it's something that is raised in every meeting, so I don't have a date, but it is always part of our briefing, and it is always on the Minister's agenda. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a follow on from the Deputy Chair's comment. You know, there's been a lot of interest in this committee about apprenticeships and about navigating the process, and I thought that's a very interesting analogy that Kate has mentioned to you about the underground, but no lines. And I think
not mine, by the way.
Pardon? No,
not mine.
But it's a very interesting point because I think it encapsulates how we have felt when we've been listening to different sector representatives, whether it's been business, whether it's been those that have been trying to organise, and particularly Workplus. And that's some disappointment that we don't have a one-stop shop, because I thought there would have been unanimous support for such a system. My experience has been is that the system is so disjointed from a government perspective in trying to assist both young people to access appropriate apprenticeships and for employers to access a skilled future apprentice. And I'm just wondering, like you mentioned to the Vice Chair about why that you haven't went down that road. Is there a specific reason why you wouldn't?
Well, I suppose along with the system as a whole, we operate within constrained financial budget position, and we are constrained in terms of our resource as well. But I would imagine the careers portal will certainly fulfil some of the requirement. I just don't want to make a commitment that it will allow advertising for every apprenticeship.
And by the way, I appreciate there is an economic consideration, and actually that's important for me to hear. Did the department explore what a potential one-stop shop portal would cost if it was to be designed? Was that option even explored?
Not at this point in time, no.
I think part of the other point would be it would be difficult to compel an employer because ultimately apprentices are employees. Just similarly, we couldn't compel any employers to put all of their vacancies on, even on apprenticeships, on a one-stop shop. So there's that as well. It's getting that employer buy-in. We did have years ago an apprenticeship portal like that called Connect to Success, and the idea was that an employer would put their opportunities on there for apprentices, would-be apprentices to look up. And it wasn't very successful. We couldn't get employers to buy into that. They weren't putting them on because they had their own ways of recruiting separately. And that's why ultimately we had to let that platform go. It was an old platform, but using the Job Apply NI that the Department for Communities manage, then we've got that apprenticeship part on there as well. But if you look on that, again, there are not a lot of opportunities that would go on.
And again, that's where I want to understand why, because, you know, the anecdotal evidence that we hear is that they're desperately looking for future apprentices, and vice versa. Apprentices are desperately looking for them. But why would an employer not? You know, this again brings me to the conclusion, and I talked about it at a previous committee, that for some it is a very closed market. It is who you know, rather than, you know, trying to enable those that want to go down an apprenticeship route to have the best opportunities available. Was there specific reasons? Was there feedback from employers why they weren't using such a system?
No feedback from, but I think, as I alluded to, different companies will have different recruitment practices, so they may use third-party recruitment agencies as well. They may just advertise themselves. I mean, Job Apply NI is a free service. There's no cost to an employer to use that service.
I see. Like there should be no reason why, you know, you couldn't do both. Like you couldn't have a one-stop shop where they obviously register with all of the opportunities, but they're equally entitled to do a private advertising campaign as well. But I feel that we're still not joining the dots here, and that's a disappointment. I think the Work Plus did talk about a national register of approved employers and apprenticeships being required. Seems to me like that would be a positive move, and I'm disappointed that I don't see it included, notwithstanding a lot of the other good work, by the way, that's involved in this. But it's just a point that really stood out to me in any of the presentations that we had. I don't see why anybody would be resistant, bar whatever the financial cost would be.
The other sort of anecdotal resistance that I've heard, and this is not quantified, is about the burden of bureaucracy on the employer. I suppose for every employment application you receive, there's a requirement to assess it accurately and then shortlist for interview. And bigger employers have HR functions that can do that for them. Middle-sized employers might use a brokerage agency or might use a company like Work Plus to do that sifting for them. And smaller employers, there's a cost and time and, you know, to the volume of, but notwithstanding that, I mean, the more applications you get in the competitive marketplace, the better for the organisation, the better for the candidate. Yeah.
Okay, and finally from me, I think, Kathryn, you did allude to, you know, the apprenticeship levy, and then obviously you do have a return from central government. Can I ask, what is the amount collected in terms of apprenticeship levy in Northern Ireland, and what is the return? So obviously it goes over to Treasury, but what comes back to us on this front?
I have a very convoluted explanation
Okay,
for you, which I will
it.
give you. The official figure published in terms of Northern Ireland take on the apprenticeship levy, the last one I think is from 2023, and it's £78 million in terms of intake. Now, Treasury informed me that includes companies that are registered in Northern Ireland but employ people who are not based in Northern Ireland, and will not include companies that are registered in other parts of the UK but have employees in Northern Ireland.
Where they're registered is the...
It's where they're registered is where the amount in terms of the levy is sort of like
earmarked.
tagged against. Yeah, exactly. So although we say 78 million in Northern Ireland, that's not fully representative of the picture of employment in Northern Ireland. Our apprenticeship costs are demand-led, so they're based on milestones being achieved in our network across apprenticeships and HLAs, but the costs for the last financial year are about £48 million.
Okay, so
Yeah.
fair to say 78 goes out, but only 48 comes back in
Yeah.
relation to apprenticeships. Like that's a problem.
Yeah.
So if we look to England, Scotland and Wales, for example, it might be easier if we look at somewhere like Wales. Apprenticeship levy is gathered. Does all of that money on apprenticeship levy return to Wales? Is it administered through Wales? How does that compare?
We wouldn't have the figures, to be honest, for Wales. Wales would operate probably a similar system to us in terms of funding the training provider, as opposed to England, where the levy is used by employers to source their training themselves. But I wouldn't have figured. But I would suspect it's probably similar to ourselves.
I'm just trying to ascertain, you know, what is collected and what is redistributed you know, are we getting an unfair deal in Northern Ireland vis-a-vis other parts of the United Kingdom?
The main difference in Northern Ireland is that we don't have budget allocation to fund public sector apprenticeships. That sits completely different to every other region in the UK. The rest of the UK have the ability to fund public sector apprenticeships. In England, the public sector organisations are able to draw down against their levy contributions through that system. And in Scotland, in Wales, it's mainstreamed. So that would be our main point of difference. So the private sector does not, are not disadvantaged in Northern Ireland, but the public sector don't have access to
So
that.
of that 78 million that's collected, 78 you said, yes?
That's,
roughly.
Yeah.
That includes public sector organisations,
Yeah.
but on the return of the 40, what was it?
48.
48.
That is
That
private.
is just private. So there's essential, and in England, the opposite can happen. They can draw the money that they draw down from the apprenticeship levy can go to both public and private,
Yeah.
and same in Scotland and Wales.
That's my understanding.
Okay, is there a reason for that?
It's budgetary.
Budgetary. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jonathan. Sinead online. You hear us, Sinead? Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Chair, and thank you for your answers so far. I just want to get some clarity around some of the content. So in the include pillar, it contains relevant measures for underrepresented regions, okay, and as well as marginalised geographical areas. Can you tell me exactly what the clear plan is for how funding apprenticeship numbers will be targeted in areas that need them the most? And I just can't see any evidence of such an approach. So perhaps you could explain it to me so that I can better understand how you're going to approach that.
I suppose under the Apprenticeship Inclusion Challenge Fund, one of the targeted areas were areas of economic deprivation or areas of in that space. We have 2 projects that are working to test ways to better support apprenticeships in that space, whether it's about better recruitment or better mentoring methods, but they're testing out how it'll work better. I mean, ultimately, the apprenticeship system is demand-led, so employers have to create vacancies and then we fund the training attached to those apprenticeship vacancies. We would be making sure that, I suppose, that any economic development type activity that happens in more marginalised communities can include, wherever possible, access to the sort of skills through apprenticeship that will support those businesses. But we also want to make sure that our system has the right supports in place where they may be different in those communities. And part of that is about making sure that we have appropriate pathways. When we see young people leaving school with lower levels of qualification, we need to make sure that the right pathways are in place from entry level, level 1, level 2, right the way up to allow somebody to access an apprenticeship. Because sometimes the barriers in place for that young person are the qualification requirements that the employer puts in place through their selection process. So making sure that we have accessible, available, appropriate pathways that support those young people to achieve to the appropriate level to get them into employment is
Sorry,
very
Kathryn, I don't want to interrupt, but
No.
So are you saying that you don't have a particular plan in order to target that at this moment? Because you're saying you're considering 2 pilots, or just can you explain that through to me, because I'm just not exactly hearing how you are actually targeting marginalised geographic areas. If it's employer led, then what are you doing to support employers in those areas of high deprivation in order for them to achieve the success in apprenticeship programs? Because it is the problem that keeps on going round the same circle. And for example, I don't see any specific targets to relate to the proportion of people in economic inactivity. Now, I may have missed it. So if you can explain how you're actually targeting that and to make sure that those furthest to reach are still included in this apprenticeship program. Not included, but actually targeted.
Okay, so we're not currently putting any targets or actions in, but the action within that inclusion theme is around the development of projects to make sure that we get the right learning to develop the policy interventions in the future. We put out.
But I thought that's what the strategy and action plan was all about. That was, you know, that is what an action plan is about, how you target. So it's the how you do it piece that I want to know.
Okay. Two projects that have been successful in the Apprenticeship Inclusion Challenge Fund are, there we go, the Bridging Futures programme. Are these? Yeah, the Bridging Futures programme in the Northwest, who are targeting developing interventions there, and Overcome, Thrive and Develop programme. Oh, sorry, that's disability. In Belfast and in Ormeau and St Field, to work out, I suppose, what they're testing through those projects, particularly through the Belfast project, is how to create better links with employers in that area and to create pathways for folk into those roles. So it's about making sure that the links are there that create apprenticeship positions and making sure that local people are in a position to benefit from them and looking at what supports would be needed to make that happen. We're also looking at pre-apprenticeship academies and piloting and testing those, which are generally focused on folk from an economically inactive background.
Okay, my observation is a lot more could be done in that area, because it's those furthest reach that we need to actually support through an apprenticeship programme. So also, can I draw your attention to the improved pillar actions on page 8 of the plan. There in evaluating the effectiveness and coherence of the office of the offer in L2 to L3. The target date for this is March 2027. Does that mean it will be commissioned then, agreed, or does it mean it'll be implemented? Page 8.
Sorry, I have too many page 8s in front of me. No, I think it's on our own. Is in terms of the evaluation of apprenticeships. Apologies. Let me just pull it out.
The target date is saying March 2027. So I just want to know: is it going to be commissioned then? Is it going to be agreed or implemented? It's just I just want to see when this apprenticeship plan, you know, the improvements. When are we going to actually see them? Or are they only just going to start at that particular point?
So
the evaluation.
This is the evaluation. Yes, so review of apprenticeships. The nature of our programmes to date, they run in a 4-year cycle, the contract, so we tend to move from one to the next. And we did do an interim evaluation of the higher level apprenticeship programme several years ago. But what we haven't done is a larger evaluation of how our apprenticeship. We know they're working because we're seeing growth all the time. The numbers are increasing all the time, but that doesn't tell the full picture in terms of employer experience, apprentice experience. How can we improve the next iteration of those programs? So that work is just starting in terms of the terms of reference now to get that underway. Our focus has been getting the new programs in place, to be honest, up to September there. Now that they're in place, then we can start to work on that, have those terms of reference completed, and then get that study underway. The proposal would be for it to be completed by 2027, by March 27, as opposed to starting.
Right. Okay. That's clear for me there as well. And then also in your document, you've said, you'd indicated that you would work closely with colleagues in the South to identify opportunities and for collaboration with policies and programmes. And the date has been identified as March 2027. So is that work commenced already? Are you moving towards that closer collaboration, or is that something that you're is a future plan?
You know, that work's already commenced. We have made engagement with our colleagues in the department in the South and in the National Apprenticeship Office and in Solace. So we worked up a collaborative proposal for the Shared Island Fund, looking at a range of activities on a cross-border basis, and we're just waiting for a decision there as to whether that project will go ahead to be funded or not from the Taoiseach's office. Should it not be successful, then we'll step into what's next in terms of that collaborative working. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and we have more differences, I think, in our system, north and south, than any of us anticipated. So I think there's a good bit of work there to do to really explore where the opportunities are and to identify and understand the hurdles for businesses operating on both sides of the border more effectively.
I suppose when I look at the skills action plan and the apprenticeship action plan and how they kind of map over one another, I think there is increasing frustration with businesses, in particular, how they connect into this. And one of the asks from the Northern Ireland Chamber event last week was that there would be, an all-island labour mobility task force set up. When I asked the Minister about that this week, she said probably not in this mandate. And it's just that everything is just put on the long finger. There are real concerns among businesses. It is really inhibiting their ability to grow because of not being able to get the skilled staff that they need, and more collaboration and more, working towards a shared vision for the future in this skills sector. It's a no-brainer. And I suppose I'm speaking, I represent obviously a border community and a border city region, and it's fundamental. So are you working with the local enterprise partnerships? Is this part of the growth plans that we're looking at, that there is more collaboration in and around the apprenticeship agenda, and that you can really target those areas that need it the most? Because honestly, that's the part of this document that I just see that there's a real vacuum.
Yeah, I mean, the Minister launched alongside Minister Lawless from Deferris on at the weekend there our first all-island higher level apprenticeship in accounting technology, which started, I think it started in the north maybe last year, but it's part of an all-island body, and the Accounting Technicians Ireland had identified that as being a cross-border priority, and we have furthered development on both sides of the border in collaboration. Totally agree. I think there are some areas where skills harmonisation is easier than others. When it comes to regulated areas, it requires a lot of engagement across a lot of bodies, but I think that's something that is a future development, and we're very optimistic, I suppose, about the success of our Shared Island bid.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Sinead. David, online.
Hey, thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. I broadly welcome this and moving towards a better system, I suppose, for all of us. You've touched on the multi, and I welcome that, actually, the multi-employer kind of shared apprenticeship stuff you've talked about. But one of the things you talked about there was the barriers that employers are putting on, and a real bugbear of mine is this barrier that we actually enforce at putting GCSE, Maths and English in to enable somebody to get on to an apprenticeship. So is there anything been done to look at removing that from a statutory point of view? And is there another way of delivering and getting the same outcome, or getting people on the courses and effectively delivering a better outcome for everybody?
Yeah, we would hear that from different employers, that why does my apprentice have to do essential skills? Why do I have to release them to do that? They don't need it for this particular job. I think it's important to remember that the individual is there as part of their lifelong learning, and it's something that they will benefit from. They might necessarily stay in with that same employer the whole time. So it's really important that they have those skills and they have the opportunity to develop those skills.
I get it. I totally get that, right? That's not the question. The question is, it's the barrier to get on to get those skills. So applying those skills, applying that once you're there and having those lifelong learning, absolutely. We want people to progress, but there's a barrier to actually getting on at the very start that's created by you know, something that's been there for years by government.
Employers will also set their own entry requirements, and those requirements as well can, you know, that they will require them to have the English and maths to do that, which would, and equally some apprenticeships are so oversubscribed that actually the training providers will set a requirement as well, so that they will have like a cut-off too.
I understand all of that. I understand the business point of view. I understand the market. I understand all of that. What I'm talking about is, as a department, you're creating another level of barrier to stop some people getting on. It's not in every role and not in every job, but we've got a segment of people that actually can't access onto, and could be great on an apprenticeship and then do their lifelong learning. So what is there any work to take that part away?
I think we do have access. So if somebody doesn't have a GCSE in maths or English at a level C, but they have been accepted onto an apprenticeship job with a lower qualification, our requirement for them at level 2 is that they have to undertake an essential skills at level 1, and at level 3 that they undertake an essential skill at level 2. So we don't put a barrier in that they have to have, although sometimes it can be down to places they look as to, you know, how they're going to shortlist for places. I suppose the other challenge genuinely is about, for the training provider, making sure that that young person has the capacity to be undertaking the qualification, because they don't want to set anybody up for failure. There's no benefit to anybody in that person starting a qualification that they don't think that maybe is very maths heavy or very written English heavy, and there wouldn't be a success. But we don't want to put barriers in people's way. I mean, one of our very large employers who recruit significantly annually removed their requirements for GCSE in English and maths, but they actually found, because they get such a high level of applications, the folk that ended up being successful through their application process did already have those qualifications. But it's not a barrier that we want to see in place.
Okay. The other bit, I suppose, and you touched on it with the multi-employer bit on that, but for an apprentice in, I'll take on a wee second about the barriers to that, but the model that's used quite often, I come from construction, out of it a little while now, but what you have is basically apprenticeships that are based around the school term. It's not based around the business, nor based around it's based around how a college delivers in a school term. Is there any way or any looking at how that can be jigged to make it work for the apprentice, make it work for the business, rather than fitting into I think so you would have blocks of things rather than every week somebody losing somebody to college for 2 days a week or whatever that is?
Yeah, I suppose 2 points would say also our private training organisations don't operate on that academic year, so they are recruiting and training all year through. So we tend to talk more about the colleges and maybe the private training organisations, and there's a substantial amount of our apprentices that do go through that route. I don't think, we obviously don't have the capacity to change the academic route that colleges do, but not all apprenticeships would be on that 1 day a week that the training provider, be it a college or a private training organisation, can work with the employer to look at an alternative way where you do a block bit of training outside of the work environment and then come back in. So there's no rigid requirement that, you know, it has to be 1 day a week every week. That is something that can be agreed between the training provider and the employer.
Okay, no, that's great to hear. Just to follow up actually on what Johnny and Kate raised there, you were talking about a one-stop shop and kind of that bit is disappointing. That's the bit that's disappointing that we're not working towards that. But a couple of things were said. You said business didn't buy in and there was no feedback from business. What has the department done to understand business?
Well, I think that's part of the reason that we're putting in place work like the apprenticeship navigators, is to better understand the needs, particularly of folk who don't engage at the moment. I mean, we work through our network of training providers who work directly with businesses. I think every college, every training provider has their own business forum in their own area where they bring people together to gather views and ideas. They understand their own delivery mechanisms best from the providers they work with, the employers they work with in their local area. And we find that there are local solutions that are often developed, like for example, the Southern Regional College have a very effective HLA portal in their area that looks at their network of employers and advertises their vacancies centrally. So sometimes it's about understanding what solution is best at a national level and what solution is best at a local level. But we do need to better understand, and that's something we're hoping to do through the work in this action plan.
Yeah, I think that's essential. I think it's absolutely essential. And the more, and a lot of what you've done on positive is really positive. So, but you've got to understand where a business is coming from in this. You're saying, a minute ago, there was another thing said about the amount of bureaucracy. Why aren't we looking to get rid of the bureaucracy or reduce the bureaucracy down for the business? We should be working to support the business, not the other way around. And it just seems in some of the things that have been said that it's tipped the wrong way, where this is all on the business rather than the department working to remove the barriers and remove the amount of bureaucracy and everything else for the business. But that needs engagement. I suppose that's the bit. Yeah, and then just finally for me, we brought a motion through a little while ago, SkillNet Ireland, full support in the House. Is there a lot of what we're talking about today, that model would actually bring that together? Is there any move at all from the department to actually deliver on a model like that?
And that sits outside our direct remit, but my understanding is under consideration, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Listen, thank you, Chair.
David, Diana.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Kathryn, Erin and Michael for coming in. It's been good to have the engagement. I'm a bit concerned. It just somehow seems, just picking up on what David has said, slightly detached or arm's length from the employers and the SMEs that I really sort of focus my attention to, particularly in Fermanagh, South Tyrone. And you mentioned that I think it was 7% uptake with SMEs in apprenticeship schemes, or the availability and the employing of apprenticeships. But going back to even what Sinead said, I didn't quite pick up. When we had Work Plus in, one of the ambitions they had was that the department should work more closely with local economic development partnerships to support the apprenticeship development. How well are the local economic partnerships doing that? What part do they play in this overall plan to support apprenticeships?
I think primarily through the local councils, the activity in this space would sit with the labour market partnerships rather than the LEPs, although I think there is some shared work in there. I think each council area has decided on their own local priorities when it comes to labour market work, but a number of them have actions that have included apprenticeship activity. I'm really welcome that to see it on the ground, and I think Work Plus have worked with a few of our local councils on their projects, and other work has been going on as well. I mean, we're really pleased to see the growth that we have had in apprenticeships over the last number of years. The number of places has increased, or the number of jobs has increased dramatically, but we know that there's more engagement to be done with SMEs particularly, and the pressures on business at that level are more than just skills, and that there's such a pressure for businesses to be dealing with rising costs and to be dealing with so many different pieces of bureaucracy that sit outside the things that we are able to directly control. But that's why we want to work through programmes like the Apprenticeship Navigator to try and better understand the needs and then meet businesses where they're at to help them navigate the system.
Thanks, Kathryn. And just on that point, I think we're focusing on the growth in apprenticeships, but where is the measurement of the success in terms of retention of staff, retention of apprenticeships, development through careers? What work is being done on that to prove that the apprenticeships, the growth in apprenticeships, is something that is benefiting the economy?
That's part of that wider evaluation work that we will be undertaking. In terms of performance,
there are no figures really right now, Michael,
no,
just telling us.
No, I mean, in terms of
48 million spend, what the return for that is? I think somewhere it said a return of 12 to 1.
You can get a lot of different figures on what I've seen it as high as, and these are
28 to
UK.
1,
Yes, for every pound spent, £27 goes back into the economy. That's probably on a wider UK level, and even that figure has been disputed as well. So it's difficult even at a national level to get a strong figure on that. And I'm not going to say here that what we'll come out with an evaluation will give a definite figure on that. In terms of our performance for apprenticeships, at level 2, level 3, approximately 65% of our apprentices then go through to full achievement. That's higher than the equivalent in England. It's probably one of the highest in the UK. At HLA, we're in the high 90s, or 90% of our HLA achieve their full qualification. So we know that that is working. And I suppose back to the question around, for employers and the benefits of bringing on an apprentice, this is where probably that longer term aspect is. What is that apprentice and that investment bringing to the employer? So it's not just a short term, I have to release that person for one day a week and I'm losing out, but actually you're getting somebody who's going to be an all-rounded employee. And what we do, and again this is anecdotal, is that apprentices are very loyal to the company that they work to, and will stay with them. So there is that longer term benefit to the company. But it's one of the areas, you're right, in terms of having those facts and figures and that evaluation, we don't have at a local level.
Thanks, Michael. And I think also for the employer, it's that learning journey. They have their trained apprenticeship and to be able to accommodate that in a full-time role going forward. I'd be concerned that apprenticeships will get their qualifications and we still have a problem with migration, or emigration rather, people with qualifications leaving here to go elsewhere. So it's the retention piece, that it's attractive to remain, it's attractive to the employers, it's attractive for the apprenticeships, for the apprentices as well. But I wanted to move on to the growth pillar. And Kathryn, you mentioned unlocking the public sector potential, that public sector represents 25% of the workforce. There is concern that there's a decline in the number of apprenticeships offered for craft and trade positions in industrial, technical and mechanical roles in the public services. I think I've been told there's been a sharp drop off. And what is the department doing to rectify that?
I suppose our work in that space is primarily around sharing information, creating networks and sharing the value. We do see some really excellent work in public sector apprenticeships on quite a small scale, particularly the Department for Infrastructure have some excellent work, and Water have some really excellent work, TransLink and colleagues in that space. But there's space for more development of different routes that we don't have elsewhere. As it stands at the minute, when it comes to like a trade apprenticeship, if it's a standard framework that exists, a public sector organisation can book a slot in a class that is delivering the same framework to the private sector and pay for that separately. And we would encourage public sector organisations to do that wherever they're experiencing those skills needs in order to grow their own. But we don't have the ability to fund that at the moment, and that presents a hurdle. Yeah. But we have seen even in recent days a significant announcement around 200 new apprenticeship places in the operational delivery profession within the NICS. So there's there is good actions happening there as well.
Okay. And in terms of in the public sector, the green jobs too, do you see any particular work happening there to provide apprenticeship training? When we talk about you've mentioned NI Water, but NI Electricity, when you talk about renewable energy, training apprenticeships into that sector?
Yeah. NIE are able to benefit from our programme. They're deemed as private sector, so they will fall under that. As Kathryn said, the bit that's missing is we cannot fund the training for public sector. We don't have the budget to fund that. However, in all other aspects, it's about how can we help those. So if it comes to the development of a new apprenticeship, if there's a specific apprenticeship in the public sector, how can we help them develop it? And we're working with Departmental Health at the minute on one link to radiographers as to how we can help them go through the process of developing a higher level apprenticeship. The only difference will be going through that whole process, we can't actually fund that training. So it's trying to help them through every other step, be it identifying what apprenticeships are needed, working with the sectoral partnerships and working with the various training providers to help them. But ultimately they have to pay for the training themselves.
I sort of think it in some ways goes back to the analogy of Kate's underground map. You know, I'm thinking of DFI and the problems they have recruiting staff for road repairs and for engineering excellence, and a lot of their work is subcontracted. I mean, if we could step back, have an overview, have the resources, that is a streamline of funded, of apprenticeship courses to get a workforce in there that enables it to be more economically viable and more successful in delivering repairs on our roads.
And I think we would completely agree with you. We would love to be able to fund those public sector apprenticeships as we do with private sector. It really comes down to budget limitations in what we can do.
And is that something you feed back in at all to the minister in terms of the public sector? That's the piece there, that there is opportunity as well, but it's reliant on funding.
Yes. And she's very, very aware of that. I mean, just a quirk of what you said about, DFI using subcontractors. If those are private companies, they will obviously can avail of our programmes. It's just the public sector workers themselves who can't.
Okay, Michael, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Diana. And finally, Padraig.
Chair, I'm having some technical difficulties here, so I'm just going to ask my 2 questions quickly, if that's okay.
It's not a problem.
So, look, thanks very much for the details so far. It's been really useful, and as you can imagine at this stage, a lot of stuff has been asked. I'm just looking for a wee bit more detail on 2 points. So you've mentioned about accessibility, which I think is really important and is obviously throughout this plan as well. One of the things I'm keen to get a better understanding of is I've noticed there that 47% of the level 2 participants come from the lower 2 deprivation quintiles. So it's just to get a better understanding of what support you're going to provide for them. And then also one of the things which we're hearing time and time again is about issues with the insurance industry and actually employers getting insurance to take on apprenticeships. So I'm keen to get a better understanding of what engagement you've had with those. But look, I think a huge amount of really positive work has been done here. I know it's multi-stranded, so want to thank you for your work so far. I think it's been really good, and it's just to kind of go into a bit more detail in those 2 points, please.
I suppose we're really pleased that we have good representation from more deprived areas in apprenticeship. It's welcome. I think when we think about what we do to particularly support those young people, I don't think we do anything different for those young people at the moment than we do for the rest of our participants. But what we do is commission excellent career support and guidance through our programmes, excellent pastoral care, and we support employers to mentor their staff through the workspace. There's materials provided around mentoring, around how to be a good line manager and how to support your staff member. And there's an element of signposting should there be additional needs. If there's any needs specifically related to disability, there's a support process in place for that. In terms of the point on insurance, we have the rising costs to business have been raised with us. Unfortunately, given the shape of our programme and the financial constraints at the moment, we have made the decision in the new programme to continue the incentive approach in the previous programme, which is to incentivise financially for employers at the end of the programme in order to best support full framework completion for the young person, or I suppose any age person now. I'm still a young person, but that's the challenge, I suppose, in apprenticeship. Often the learning curve is steep and then the apprentice becomes a valuable member of the business. But then they still need time to go out and finish off their qualifications. And we incentivise to make sure that that happens, to make sure that the person gets the qualifications they need to become portable, to have currency in the workplace, to be able to further progress their career and move to the next level if that's what they choose to do. And that's why we have financially incentivised at that point in the journey. There are arguments for incentivising earlier, but unfortunately that isn't something that we in a very constrained financial environment have been able to do. But I think it's something that's constantly going to be under review, and we are evaluating, and we'll be evaluating all the options there as we move forward, just to be able to understand what supports are needed to really ensure that there is the best outcome for the apprentice and for the business. The investment from every individual business in their apprentice, I suppose, is pretty significant when it comes to wages over 2 to up to 4 years, when it comes to time from every supervisor and line manager. And I've met so many of them, and they are such dedicated people who are committed to making sure that their apprentice succeeds. But it takes time, and it takes a business commitment to the process. So there are real costs, and they're pretty significant, but they represent an investment in the future of their business and the future skills of their workforce.
Thanks for that. And just Chair, if it's okay to make just a quick sort of supplementary point.
No problem.
Just on that, in terms of the actual insurance industry, has there been much engagement? And I suppose, will there be more engagement? Because it is something which I know as a committee we've raised with ABI. And it's just that obviously is a barrier to a lot of employers taking part in this process. And obviously, the more employers we have, the more opportunities apprentices have. So I just think that it's a key kind of gateway for people to get in and start their employment. So it's just to see kind of, if there's going to be more engagement with the insurance industry directly, because I do think that that's a huge block at the minute that we're getting back from businesses locally.
It's really helpful to hear, and I think it's something we can certainly take away and work out what to do next with.
Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you all very much. That was quite an extensive session, a lot of questions, and no doubt there will be more over the coming weeks and months as this progresses through. So look, thank you all very much for taking the time. We very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, members, that was a useful session. In terms of a summary then, there were a number of issues that were raised during that session. Clerk, do you want to maybe summarise as to some of those points that were raised in the department?
So members, if, as usual, members will keep me right, but perhaps the committee would like to write to the department just seeking information on the apprenticeship levy versus the apprenticeship spending in Northern Ireland compared to England, Wales and Scotland. How much sort of apprenticeship support is actually available to the public sector in Northern Ireland, and further stuff about the public sector apprenticeship support. I think there's an announcement today.
It was yesterday.
Was it yesterday?
Department of Finance.
Which I think they mentioned. But in terms of apprenticeship support, route development, trade apprenticeships, and indeed the support for green skills. And additionally, I'm wondering, am I sensing correctly from members that they would probably like a separate oral and written evidence session from members from the department on the skills action plan?
Yeah, I think that'll be useful given the fact that it was announced last week and we've seen sight of it. I think a lot of this, there's a lot of overlap, and but I also think, Clerk, it may be useful in terms of that piece around the one-stop shop, and it has been raised by a number of members. I think the fact that the department, or that there was actually very little work carried out even in terms of scoping around costs, etc., to see, is that something that was raised by Work Plus, and I think that I think it's something that's, that would be useful, to be perfectly honest. And I think maybe we could ask the department, is it something that, obviously they answered the question today, but is it something that the Minister may seek to look at?
Is the committee perhaps urging the department to do something on this? What this is if you recall, when Work Plus came, the chap who was there, he was buying a house.
Yes,
he was an apprentice, and what he said was, the difficult thing about applying for an apprenticeship is that you have to fill in a different form for every single employer, and it takes forever to do it properly, spell it right, all those good things. And what they have in the Republic of Ireland is one-stop shop. It's a generation apprenticeship or something it's called, where you have one form and there's this big national register. And I don't imagine the businesses in the Republic of Ireland are terribly different from the businesses in Northern Ireland. Maybe they are, but why can they do it and we not do it, Chairperson?
Awesome.
Yeah, no, like I think I was expecting to see something on that. No, I take the word, because Kathryn did mention the costs, but then when I probed further, they didn't seem to have carried out any work to suggest what costs would be. And if it is cost, that is a consideration we have to give to it. But it would be good to see a wee bit more of that. I also take on board her point, though I don't quite understand it in some ways, as to why businesses wouldn't want to use such a portal if it was online. I can't understand that. Only for it, I do get the point about bureaucracy, but then if the bureaucracy is a problem, they have to do that privately anyway. So I'm a wee bit muddled on it. I thought it was a good concept, but I would like to see more points teased out from them as to consideration of this.
Yeah, completely agree. I think the argument that businesses use different ways of advertising is because there isn't a single place to advertise, and they have to. Maybe a one-stop shop isn't the right answer for the department right now, but it would be good to see the thinking and the exploration of that.
I think it's more details, not to urge a particular way at this minute in time. I think it's about seeing what exercise has been done around it and what consideration has been given.
Just to clarify one point, I also would want it to be known, I don't believe we should be compelling everybody that they can only use one way. I think there's multiple ways in which they can advertise. I don't think that's ever the intention of anybody, but...
Oh, absolutely. Sinead, are you looking in?
Yeah. Again, I am disappointed not to see actual targets, a clear plan on how funding apprenticeship numbers in those areas that need it the most as well. So that targeted intervention, we're back to the regional balance conversation again. There just isn't a plan, and the targets aren't there. They've talked about 2 pilots, the one in the northwest and one I think in West Belfast or somewhere in Belfast. I didn't quite catch the geographical area that it was in. So it's just disappointing, because if it is one of the key visions of the minister, then it should be a clear target in the action plan itself.
Yep.
So we reflect that in the
response.
Is that agreed?
Members happy with that?
I'd also like to ask what consideration is being given around the sectoral action plans in terms of the skills agenda.
Agreed, members?
Agreed? Yep. Okay, members, we'll move on. We've agreed, obviously, to set up a session for the skills action plan as well. Okay. Next item 9 in the agenda is Insolvency Practitioner Regulations SL1. Members are referred to the cover note at page 855. Peter, Kirk, do you want to give a wee summary as to exactly what this SL1 will mean?
Okay, members, we've seen one of these before. What this is the insolvency practitioners. They have recognised professional bodies. There used to be about 5 of them, but a couple of them have dropped out because there aren't that many insolvency practitioners around anymore, and they tend to gravitate towards other bodies. So earlier this year, the committee would have noted a stat rule which removed the Chartered Accountants of Ireland, and now the Law Society of Northern Ireland wishes to be removed from the list of recognised professional bodies. It had 3 insolvency practitioner members. Only one was practising as an insolvency practitioner, and she had obtained her licence from another RPB. I think she was in front of us last week. The woman that was sitting on the end might have been the person in question, but anyway. So what this rule, it has no procedure. You only really need to note, but the remaining recognised professional bodies will be the Insolvency Practitioners Association, which you just heard from, and also the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales and the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Scotland. So, Chairperson, if I can ask if members have any concerns or questions in respect of this rule?
I'm not sensing anybody with any burning questions. No. Okay, members, are you content that the department then make the proposed rule? Is that agreed? Yep. Okay, item 10 then, which is correspondence. So I ask members to turn to page 864 of your meeting pack, where there's an index of items of correspondence. So we'll just go through these. So item 2, page 867, members are asked to note ministerial correspondence in respect of project Gigabit. The contract has not yet been awarded and procurement processes are still ongoing. It states in the letter that due to value for money considerations, approximately 1,500 premises which were originally in the scope of intervention will no longer be included. So members, I was going to propose that we write to the department to seek as to where those 1,500 premises were to be or where would be affected, and why obviously this decision, it seems to be a value for money decision, but I think it's important we seek clarity as to where those 1,500 properties potentially would have been. Any question, David?
Yeah. No, I was actually going to raise exactly that, Chair. So I think that's important that we get the range of what that is and the reason, the background reason for this.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Members agreed? Yeah. Great. Okay, item 3, 869, page 869, members are asked to note the departmental response in respect of the multi-campus cost from Ulster University. It also refers to the fact that the Higher Education Financial Needs Assessment is reported as being procured, but in the Skills Action Plan it refers to that actually running on beyond autumn, but I think that's something maybe we'll pick up with the department at a later stage. Peter?
I think 10th of December the department, and we've confirmed it with them several times, they're going to say they're going to come to us on the 10th of December to tell us about the Higher Education Financial Needs Assessment and City and Growth Deal.
So we can raise it with them then, and if there's nothing forthcoming we can question why. So members content to note. Item 4, page 872, again a response from the department in relation to the inclusion issues at McGee. No further detail has been required. I know that certainly in a personal capacity I've followed this up with the university. Are members content to note the response from the department? Yeah. Item 5, page 876, again the departmental response in respect of the DFE DE cross-departmental working group. The working group hasn't met, will not meet until the 24th of November. Work plans have been developed and will likely be shared after the group meets. Are members content to note? Yeah. Page 880, item 6, respect of the local economic partnerships, revised allocations. All 11 LEPs or development action plans, 45 million will be spent largely in years 2 and 3. Is that right? Yeah. Members content to note? Yep. Item 7, again, members are asked to note a departmental response in respect of the review of the Energy Efficiency Capital Grant Scheme is about to report. No further update is provided. Jonathan?
Yeah, no, look, I appreciate, because it was actually me that requested this, but it doesn't really tell me anything, you know, in terms of, I want clarity on, are they going to continue, or are they going to scrap the scheme? And I'm not getting that. I just think it's really important for industry to know this, because it is affecting order books. I don't know if there's anything further that we can say back in correspondence about that. They did say that they were coming soon to conclusion on I'm not none the wiser.
No, we're none the wiser, but I suppose it's until the report is available, the only other thing you can ask is, for a time scale for that. If members are happy. Yeah. Okay. Item number 8, page 888, members are asked to note a departmental response respect of every Euro hub investment at Moloskin. I think that was raised by David at the time. It just basically states that the department didn't provide financial support for this investment. David, are you content? Members content to note that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, content, sorry.
Yeah. Item 9, page 891, members are asked to note a ministerial written statement, including a review of Invest NI support since 2023 in excess of £1 million per project. Members, have you seen sight of item 9? We're asked to note the statement from the Minister. Jonathan?
Yeah, no, I'm extremely concerned about this, and I have raised it in the chamber. I think this is the first time I've ever seen an economy minister that's putting barriers up to for businesses in Northern Ireland doing businesses internationally. I think it's childish and it's politically motivated, and it's economic self-sabotage in many ways. And I see it also being a glaringly inconsistent, because Minister Archibald is registered as a keynote speaker in November at the China and Northern Ireland Cooperative Forum. Is she instructing Invest NI clients that perhaps do trade in China to boycott them because of their links with over 1 million of its own citizens in concentration camps at forced labour? That was a UN report citing genocide in 2022. Is she instructing Invest NI firms to boycott Chinese medical or tech firms that are implicated in harvesting organs of prisoners? That was in a UN tribunal evidence in 2019. Or is it just a Jewish state in Israel that the minister wants to target? Because I am extremely uncomfortable with where this has went. I believe that there was no executive approval for such a decision, and ultimately it should find its way back there. But I just think it's very disappointing that this is the approach that this minister has adopted in an industry that has over 9,000 people employed in Northern Ireland, accounts for over 2 billion in terms of our GDP, and to adopt such an approach is totally immature.
Do any other members want to speak on this issue? Kate, first.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously am quite outspoken on what's happening in Gaza and feel very strongly about it. But what, and not to get into a political debate about it right now, because it isn't the place. But what I thought when I saw this is actually it points to me about the lack of an international relations strategy from TEO. And when we're looking at consistency of how we deal with these things, I would like to have clarity about how we do engage ethically with other countries that are doing things that are not compliant with human rights as well. So for me, just one point I'd like to make is that actually I think that the lack of an international relations strategy is a real problem here, and TEO need to bring that forward as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you, Emma.
Yeah, I suppose I just obviously am in support of what the minister is doing here. I don't think calling it childish is appropriate.
I think it is childish.
That's you're right to have your view.
Yeah.
You're entitled to have your view. But we engage with other countries. That does not mean we endorse what they do. In this particular circumstance, we have businesses here who are producing items that are being used in the genocide of men, women, children and babies. So whilst we have to support our businesses here, and we all know people who are employed across sectors, and we might not always agree with everything they're involved in, the minister has a responsibility to ensure that ethically things are being followed through. And the point that Kate has made around the fact that we don't have, I suppose, universality of approach within the executive is always going to flag up difficulties for us here. But you can disagree with something and just leave it at that. That's 110%. But see, that again, that's the point that I just made. We engage with countries on a range of issues. I'm an Irish Republican. We engaged with the British government when they were murdering people in this country.
China, though?
So
genocide reported.
So the point is, this is relating to one particular sector here and what they're producing and whether or not that is contributing. And she has asked Invest to carry out a review of the public money that has been spent there, and it has come back conclusively that they're not supporting projects that are involved in the Israeli genocide. And that's what this is in relation to.
Engaging in economic self-sabotage.
I'm just going to bring in Diana has signalled there.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I just wanted to ask, is this really within the power of the Minister's competency? Is this not a reserved matter for the UK government? I just feel deeply uncomfortable about it because, I just think it's quite a controversial thing to do, and the steps that the Minister has taken. That's just my comment on it at this point.
Thanks, Diana. Clearly, there's not agreement across the committee in relation to what the minister has done. Certainly speaking in a personal capacity, having seen the statement, I do think it was extraordinary. I do feel that it is actually quite disturbing in terms of some of the language that was used within the statement. I think it is disturbing that the Minister has asked InvestNI to review the situation from the 7th of October 2023 on. That is a particularly sickening date, obviously, for the Jewish community and what happened in Israel. And there was no reference to that in the Minister's statement. And that's notwithstanding, obviously, the issues that are ongoing in that part of the world. In terms of what is now done, obviously we have the statement from the Minister. There's ongoing, I suppose, queries around, did the Minister have the ability to do what she has done? And I think that we do need to seek clarity on that, in terms of Diana's point as well around the remits. I don't know, Clerk, if you can speak to if there's any particular proposals from the floor, from the committee, as to what we do next on the issue.
Just to answer Ms Armstrong's question, so international trade is reserved, but the furtherance of the trade of Northern Ireland is devolved. So that's why we have an InvestNI, it's why they do international trade missions. So that's where we are. So
and it's worth noting, Clerk, as well, the InvestNI are up in front of the committee on the 3rd of December. There will be an opportunity in terms of questioning InvestNI in terms of the work that they carried out, whether or not, obviously, I listen day and daily to the challenges that exist within InvestNI. The fact that they have spent quite a considerable time clearly on this issue, very selective, I must say. I think that we need to look at the wider position and whether or not that was appropriate.
Sure, if Diana was making a proposal for us to ask clarity from the Minister on the position about whether or not this falls within the devolved competency, but also within the ministerial code and her remit under the St Andrews Act, I would be happy to second that proposal.
Are members content? Just summarise, Clerk, for us as to what the committee's been asked to do.
Well, I think Mr Buckley has suggested that the committee writes to the Minister, as he just said, seeking clarity on whether this matter is devolved and whether it complies with the ministerial code. And it's for members to decide whether they want to do that.
I wouldn't be in support of that.
So we're obviously not going to be unanimous in terms of the committee position. So we are going to have, I see, just before I go to consider this vote, Padraig has indicated. Go ahead, Padraig.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I wouldn't be in support of the committee doing it either. If you want to do it yourself, work away, but we won't be supporting that.
I mean, I have very clear views on what's happening, and I don't think we need to have this debate within this committee. We can have it in the chamber. I think the Minister can answer for herself. So if we're going to write, I'm not going to make a big thing about it. But I think there is a genocide that's going on, and people feel very passionately about this. So.
And I think, Kate, in fairness, you're right in that. I think that what we can't do, we're not going to solve all of the wider issues that are ongoing at the minute in the Middle East. I think this is a very specific issue in relation to the Minister, her remit, and I think the consequences of what she has done. So we obviously have a proposal now to write to the Minister on this issue. I've two members who have indicated that they would not be in favour of that, but I do think we need to seek the views of obviously Jonathan supporting David and Sinead.
Sorry. I think the Minister and the Department are right to have ethical engagement within business and to point out that as well. I don't, I have very, very strong views about what is happening in Gaza and Palestine, and to be part of that for businesses here, to be part of preparing, bullets or weapons or, any manufacturing any part of stuff that is raining terror and genocide on innocent children is just unacceptable from a business perspective and an ethical perspective. And I think, you know, businesses have to be very, very mindful of that as well. So, you know, there's no problem in writing to her. I'm sure she is absolutely well versed on all of this and her role in it, but I don't think it's really acceptable I honestly, Jonathan, I don't think it's acceptable to call it childish. I think it's a very grown-up approach to have ethics in every part of business that you engage in as well. So that's not childish, that's just the right way to operate.
Okay, members, finally David, and then I think we're going to move on from, go David.
Yeah, so I agree with all of what's been said, Kate, actually Sinead there, and has been said before. I also feel very strongly that the genocide that is going on and is happening, we can't ignore that. It's disappointing this has actually come at a committee and been raised in this manner, because it actually Invest doesn't support the manufacturer, and that's stated in this. But listen, happy to write. Just think this isn't the format for this to have been raised. I think this we'll have a debate in the chamber, have a debate in the chamber, and have your view. But it's disappointing that this comes up at a committee stage now.
David, thanks for that. I suppose the reason, just a wee second, Emma, if you don't mind. The reason I suppose that it has been raised, David, is the fact that this was brought forward in a written statement by the Minister. It wasn't taken to the Assembly chamber for, I suppose, questioning or discussion. That would have been at least a minimum of what I would have expected the Minister to do with such a significant statement. So it has been raised, and as I say, we don't need to get into the rights and wrongs of everything that has happened over this past 2 years. Emma?
Yeah, can I just ask for clarity here? So we're writing to the Economy Minister to ask her whether or not it is appropriate for her to ask a departmental body under her department carry out a review of whether or not any of the investments that they've supported local companies are involved in the production of materials that are being used in a genocide. That's what we're asking her.
The clerk will summarise the content, but I also think it's important to seek clarity in terms of we know that the reality in terms of whether or not this issue should have been taken to the executive. It's a very much an issue that we believe should have been taken to the executive.
We're asking the Economy Minister whether it is cross-cutting and controversial that she asks that her department does not financially support human rights violations. Just for clarity, that's what the committee is asking.
For clarity, what my understanding would be that it would include the Minister's actions in relation to the indication that Northern Ireland wouldn't take part in UK-Israel trade talks, and that the Northern Ireland businesses would not be involved in business interactions in terms of trade delegations as well, whether or not it was
a genocidal state.
Well,
in your opinion, that's not the. But look, we're
more than me. But no, just for clarity, just so that's clear. That's clear.
Look, we're not going to get agreed. I say we are being very selective in terms of our wordings. But look, what we're going to do now is we're going to move on. I think there is broad agreement, bar two members who have indicated that they wouldn't be supportive of, and that's Emma and Padraig. And Kate?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to write. I think she can come back and defend her position. I would also just ask that we also write to the Executive Office about the international relations strategy.
So we're happy to. And sorry, Sinead, you had indicated you're not happy to write.
I mean, if we are going to write, I think it would, because of the nature of the conversation that has happened here around the table, it would be appropriate to share the wording of that letter with the rest of the committee so that we can all sign it off.
Well, no, we're not. Sorry, just to get clarity in terms of we all sign it off. Clerk, you're going to prepare the letter, and it wouldn't be. I'm assuming it wouldn't be normal convention that every letter that goes to the department that it's sent out for committee members to sign off. That's not normally the way it is done. But Clerk, I'm happy to take your guidance in terms of that.
It's for members to decide. Ordinarily, what would happen is you agree something, I'll draft it, the chairperson signs it if they're happy. but I'm in the hands of the committee. So
Look, I think we don't need to overcomplicate the situation, to be honest. I think that there's a very clear purpose as to why we're writing. If the Minister can stand over what she's done, then she'll provide a response. It's as simple as that. Are members happy that the clerk drafts a letter and sends it to the Minister, and we will look at the response when we get it? Are members content? Yeah.
But Sinn Féin members are indicating that they...
I've already stated.
That's well.
I'll record that in the minutes. Then.
I'm actually not really content because I don't know what the content of the letter is, because there's been
Clerk,
2 or 3 iterations.
The final time,
here.
for the final time, we'll just summarise what is going to be in the letter, and then we'll get it.
Right.
So I understand, where the members are coming from. So we're writing. The committee's writing to the Minister. This is in respect of the engagement of Invest NI and the department in trade talks with the State of Israel. And basically our question then is it within the competency, is it involved competency, within our competency to indicate that the department and Invest NI would not participate, and is that in breach of the ministerial code?
That's it.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Yes. We'll move on then, members. Members' comments.
Sorry, we're also writing to TE
Chair.
about the international.
Yes, and we're writing to TE.
Okay.
Patrick, very finally, we're going to move on.
Yeah, Chair, I'm not content with that. I mean, if you want to write yourself, but we don't agree with this as a committee. We've made that extremely abundantly clear. If you want to write, if Johnny wants to write, then let him write. But
we've already. Yeah, what we're going to do now is we're going to we'll do a vote on this matter and we'll move on. Okay. Yeah. So if I could ask for members who are in agreement with sending a letter to raise their hand, please. Members in agreement.
And yourself, Chairperson.
And David. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those who do not want to send a letter to the Minister, please raise your hand. 1, 2.
Can I qualify that? I don't know what's going to be in the letter, because the letter it's really not that clear. So I don't see why, that we wouldn't have an input into the contents of that letter, because there has been 2 or 3 things bandied about here in terms of trade talks, trade initiatives. What I really object to, is that we are by inference saying that somehow that it is acceptable that businesses here in Northern Ireland could be now or in the future supported by Invest NI to create weapons that are killing children, innocent people in Gaza. And I just have no truck with that at all. And so it's really important that any letter comes out from the committee does not infer that in any shape, form or fashion, because I cannot support that.
Oh, Sinead, and if your hand's up that you're not supporting the letter, that is fine. There's a majority now who've said that.
It is something because you cannot give me any clarity whatsoever.
The clarity has been given, Sinead, by the clerk now on a number of occasions, and I think that we're going to now move on. I don't think it has to be prolonged any further in terms of what the contents of the letter will be. I think it's quite clear and it's on record, and we can all watch it back again to see what was said. We're going to now move on to item number 10, which is in relation to the departmental correspondence providing copies of partnership agreements laid by DFE for the Open University, St Mary's, University College and Stranmillis University College. Are members content to note? No. Content, okay. Item number 11, page 1055. Members are asked to note departmental correspondence providing the Macalia, Rush and Dunlow Yurt Directors Report and Financial Statements 2024-25. Members, are you content to note that piece of correspondence? Yeah. Item 12, members are asked to note correspondence providing the Bedford Street Developments Directors Report and Financial Statements 24-25. Members content to note? Item 13, page 1131. Members are asked to note departmental correspondence in respect of Invest NI. The report advises a number of the departing Invest NI directors received departure payments of around £200,000, which, look, members, again, Invest NI are coming to the committee. What date was that, Peter?
That is in December.
December. Okay, so if there's any question, members can raise it then. Are members content to note? Item 14, members, Secretary of State response to our letter in respect of Foyle Ports AA Growth Zone application. The department advises the outcome of the AA growth zone process is expected shortly. Are members content to forward this response to the Foilport? Content. And just to declare, my wife's a member of the Foilport Commission. Item 15, members, page 1294. Members are asked to note a response from the Department for Communities in respect of workplace savings schemes. DFC co-sponsors the Northern Ireland Financial Wellbeing Delivery Plan with the Money and Pension Service. Members content to note. Okay, members, moving on. Item number 16. Members are asked to note a response from the Department for Communities indicating no progress has been made on the Pay Transparency Directive and the lead department has not yet been identified. I know, Sinead, this was something that you had raised previously. Are members content to note?
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. Item 17, page 1303. Members are asked to consider from Business Office in respect departmental minute relating to a letter of comfort for tourism NI pensions. Clark, do you want to summarise, because this is an issue which has arose before?
So members, this was sent to us over the summer. Basically what it is, a letter of comfort around Northern Ireland tourism pensions, so that in the eventuality if for some reason tourism Northern Ireland no longer existing, the pensions would still be paid. By providing the letter of comfort, it reduces the pension costs. So what happened was the department laid this minute in the Business Office over the summer. What the rules say is that members are supposed to have the opportunity to raise an objection, say ask a question, bring it up in committee, do it in plenary. Because it was done during summer recess, well, you couldn't do that. So the minute was withdrawn and has been relayed as correct procedures were not followed the first time. So the question then, members, is do you have any concerns in respect of this letter of comfort? If you don't, then I will, if you do, then I will communicate that to the department. But if you don't, I will indicate that you don't and you're content to note.
Members content? Yeah. Okay. Item 18, members just asked to note a memo from the Assembly Executive Review Committee, including a response to the department in respect of the EERC's call for evidence on scrutiny of cross-cutting executive strategies, and just to declare a member of that committee. Any other comments from members content to note? Item 19, members asked to consider a response from EP UK Investments in respect of the committee's request for an evidence session from the owners of Kilroot Power Station. Owing to legal proceedings, Kilroot had declined to provide evidence at this time. Kilroot also refers to a simple modification to the code dealing with the settlement of balancing market payments, which will, if implemented, entirely remove the risk of increased cost to consumers, which arise as a result of EPNIE's gas turbines running in excess of their environmental permitted hours. Members, are you content to write to the utility regulator seeking clarity on the simple modification to the code?
Great.
Members content? Yep. Okay, item 20, consider a request from NFDA to brief the committee in relation to car registration issues. Members content to schedule an oral and written evidence session from NFDA on the 19th of November. Members content. Yep. And the final item 21 is in tabled papers. Members are asked to consider an invitation from the Electricity Safety First to attend a drop-in event on the 3rd of November. Are members content to individually support that? Diaries permitting. Okay. Forward work programme, Peter.
So members, thanks for coming so very early this morning. We've Halloween recess next week. The week after, I'm hoping to get R3. They're the final insolvency practitioners, so it'll be the final evidence session of the Insolvency Amendment Bill. It's also suggested that the committee takes a briefing from Matrix on their AI research report on the 19th of November. Additionally, if members will recall, the committee did some work on disability support service providers, and the department then offered a visit that we go and see these disability support service providers who help out with skills from life and work. So they're suggesting that we visit some providers in West Belfast on the 19th of November, and I propose to do that in the afternoon if that would work for some members. I know you have committee meetings for other ones, but it's really the only time I think that would work. So you'd have time. That might be a fairly lengthy session on the 19th. You then have your lunch, and then we could nip out to this other bit of Belfast if members are content.
Yeah, it won't suit some of us obviously because we've committees in that afternoon, but for others that are available, he's content.
Tell you what, members, I'll text you all individually and you can advise me on your availability, but I'll, subject to that, I'll say that you're content.
Members of committees that day.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Chair, in terms of other things then, in terms of the RHI Closure of Domestic Scheme Bill, if you look at page 1320 of your packs, we have a newspaper advertisement which we're going to place in the newspapers very shortly as part of our call for evidence. There's a list of stakeholders, which is at page 1321, so that now includes NIAPA, as Ms. Sharon asked. And of course, members, we're going to write to certain individuals, but anybody can respond. Anybody that they don't need to be written to. It's going to be tweeted and on social media and all that good stuff. The call for evidence letter, which I'll be sending out, is at page 1323. And we also have a citizen space, which anybody can again fill in, and that's at page 1326. So can I ask, Chairperson, is the committee content with all of this and for me to issue this as part of our call for evidence?
Yeah. Everybody content? Yeah. Okay. Okay, members.
Press release.
The press release.
And the press release.
The press release. The press release is on the back, members of your table packs. Everybody's hopefully read that.
So it's page 34 of your table packs. It's a very straightforward press release, which just the comms office asked me to do yesterday evening.
There's a quote from the chair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I'm sure you won't mind. So.
Okay, members. Any other business?
Sorry, members. Just a quick one on the insolvency practitioners. They sent us another paper. If you're content for me to put that on our website, that's just what we do with the stuff. If it's okay, that's great.
Another business.
We haven't had any feedback about the sectoral action plans, have we? About them coming to committee to brief?
No, we have not. But we do. Well, we'll ask about the skills action plan. But I know the members
see if
are
anything
interested.
comes from that. Thank you.
Okay, members, date and time of the next meeting, Wednesday the 5th of November, 10 a.m. in this room 30. Members content that the committee now adjourn?
Okay, members, thanks very much. That was a long session. Thank you very much.